The first story we've got today is Jock MKT. So this is a Boston startup that developed a trading platform for fantasy sports. They actually just raised $10 million in venture capital funding. It's really a mobile app that's sort of like a financial market app based on fantasy sports metrics. So the players are ranked by fantasy points, accumulated at the end of each contest, and then shares of each player then assigned a value based on how the player finished, which is super kind of interesting, right? It's this fantasy sports idea mixed with what we've seen with the stock market, right? This up and down valuations of how things can grow and move. Taylor, what do you think about this idea, and what do you think about this moving forward in terms of the valuations of athletes?
Yeah, so Jock MKT, they like you pronounce it as Jock Market. That's the way that they're looking at it. And you have a board member from DraftKings that is an early investor with on this campaign, and I think it's an idea that at first I was a little bit wary of it. And so I mentioned the DraftKings because they have individuals involved with this that aren't new to the game, and they understand what they're doing with this right now phone-based application. And it's just like Robinhood is what they're trying to describe it as, and that is the quote is it's like a Robinhood tied to major passion for sports, and it's a new market segment within the daily fantasy sports aspect of things. So just like Robinhood, you buy shares, and then those shares go up and down. You play in the stock market. This is stock market for sports, and so we had an interesting comment off air about what would happen if you would say bet Phil Mickelson to start the PGA Championship that just concluded this past weekend, and if his share was $3 a share, and it's going to be interesting how many shares are going to be out there per athlete. Sure. But you gobble up however many shares, and then he jumps up to $15, and you're like, oh, I'm selling. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see who, when a person is hot and their stock is hot, like who's buying that stock, or is that going to be the common fan thinking that $15 can jump to $25? It's not, you don't have financial institutions saying, trying to gobble up these stocks because they're not in this. So that's just, it's interesting, but I like the idea to start off with. What do you think?
I agree. I think what's interesting too is the ranking of the fantasy points, right? I couldn't find enough information there of what that algorithm is, how they're basing the fantasy points. So essentially how the stock or the valuation of a player can go up or down. But it is one of these, there's been a couple of these that have come out where they're trying to do some sort of market, kind of type thing for athletes, right? Trying to put valuations on athletes where you can kind of buy and share. I think it's a little tricky too, I think, just from representation perspective, right? Anytime you're kind of buying and selling, but I do like the fact that it's this point system, this fantasy point system that I think we're all kind of used to fantasy, and then tying it to real dollars and then seeing how the valuations move up and down. To your point, if you had bet Phil Mickelson, or if you bought shares of Phil Mickelson going into the weekend, you would have had a very good weekend, or if you just bet on Phil in general to win. So this is, I think it's pretty cool, obviously, being able to use some of the online platforms like DraftKings or FanDuel as well to be able to enhance the evaluation or kind of look at how they're propping up or looking at some of their daily wagers as well. I think is a cool aspect of the platform, but we'll see how many people start to get into this. Obviously, the funding, I'm sure, is going to help from a marketing perspective, but also to enhance what their platform is.
And I wonder from an athlete standpoint, because this technically isn't gambling, this could be considered stocks in a certain way. So can an athlete, depending on the bylaws of a given league, gobble up their shares and I'm hot? Like that's, you're Pete Rosing yourself, but instead of going to a casino or a bookie, you're just doing it through this now athletic stock exchange, and you're purchasing your own shares essentially. So, or what's the cut going to be for that for players as well? What would the split be? There's a lot of questions on the surface. This looks really good. I think and there's, like I said, there's DraftKings involved with this. A member from DraftKings, you have an MIT grad. There's some smart individuals that are a part of this, and obviously they're looking towards the future when you have legal ramifications and everything. So they know what they're getting into. I'm interested to see where they go, and like you said, with the analytics that they have, what metrics are they going to be using? Are there going to be futures? Am I going to be able to have pre-market? Like what's it going to look like? Is it going to just be strictly 9 to 4? 9 to 5? How are they gonna structure all of this? And so when a rookie comes on, is there going to be an IPO drop initially? So like LaMelo Ball, once he entered into the league, is there going to be is there an IPO offering for him? And then that could just drop, or is it going to hold or drop? Like there's a lot of questions. If you've been playing the stocks, because everybody's been doing the Robin Hood, and we shouldn't even mention that name, but everybody's been doing, the passive trading as COVID has hit. So this is interesting. I'm really, as you can see, it's piqued my interest.
Yeah. No, to your point, I think they're the questions there around could an athlete buy shares of another athlete or their own is incredibly interesting.